to look back 3 to 5 years from now and say that this coaching conversation with me today changed everything for you about your prep, what would need to happen?
I'd have to get my goal score, get accepted into law school, and be happy with my choice.
Excellent. All right. And what's the biggest thing holding you back right now?
My score.
Your score. What's holding you back from achieving the goal score?
I think I'm not studying properly. Just like you, I read through your comments, you were going from practice test to practice test and hoping your score would improve by doing that. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not looking at any particular strategies that'll help me improve my score in any of the sections.
So you've been taking a lot of timed exams?
Yeah, I have.
How many per week?
I think one per week, but I've been studying for quite a while, so it added up.
Okay, so you're doing one per week, but what else are you doing during the rest of the week?
There's a course through Khan Academy that I've also been using, so I'm pretty sure they're using quite a few practice exams for the questions that they have. So that's another couple of practice exams that I do.
And I know that you just joined my courses recently as well, right?
Right, I did.
Have you started digging into the material?
Yes, I'm using, I think, the Supreme course or something. So I'm working with the logical reasoning right now. I'm on day 5.
Okay, and so you're using the study plan?
Yes.
And so the study plan, it has you start off with the foundational material, learning the basics, and then go on to doing questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're only on day 5, you're just getting started with it, but if you follow that plan, you won't just be doing exam after exam. You'll be doing the foundational material first before you dive into the exams themselves. So that alone will change your approach.
Okay.
Up to this point, how long have you been studying for?
Probably on and off a year and a half.
Year and a half. So a year and a half of doing an exam a week approximately. Is that more or less what you've been doing?
Not every week, but trust me, I've done a lot of exams.
Yeah, for sure. No, I believe it. That's what most people want to do. I mean, if there's 87 numbered exams, well, just start with exam 1, work to exam 87 is the logic. And there's a certain logic to that. But I recommend instead a 5-step approach to studying where you build learning first. So it's the laser approach to studying: learning, accuracy, sections, exams, and review. So step 1 is learning, reading the theory, watching the theory, whatever source you use, but you're just getting the fundamental concepts. You do that first. Then you apply those to specific LSAT problems during the accuracy phase, where you're doing individual questions by type. So using the study plan, I have you starting off with games, doing the easiest order in games, then moderate order in games, then difficult order in games, then easy grouping, moderate grouping, difficult grouping, and so on. Do the same with logical reasoning, same with reading comp. Then individual sections, S for sections, then E for exams, doing full-length 5-section exams to build your endurance. That's where, of course, for most people just jump right in with the exams, but that's actually step 4, as you see. And then step 5 is review. So you might have been doing steps 4 and 5 without yet doing steps 1, 2, and 3. The study plan will give you steps 1, 2, and 3, step-by-step, hyper-specific, so that step-by-step, day by day, you know exactly what to do and what not to do. Now, when's your target test date, Sarah?
I guess at this point, October. I was considering the end of September, but since I'm trying this, let's see. I think October.
Cool. So that gives you a little more than a month and a half, plenty of time, since you've already been studying for quite a while already. But I know you're looking for a big score increase, right?
Yeah, 9 points.
Could happen by October, but you might also want to register for November just to have that backup.
Okay.
How does that feel to you?
Yeah, that's fine. It's just I'm registered for September right now, so if I was to withdraw, would that be an issue? Would that show up on my apps?
No, it wouldn't. The nice thing is that withdrawals never show up. Law schools will never even know that you were registered for it.
Okay. So that's fine. I don't have a problem with that as long as I see improvements.
Yeah, well, you've just got to give yourself the time because exams are not enough. Review is more important than the exams that you're doing. So you want to make sure you're spending enough time on the review process. And then before those exams, you also want to make sure that you have a really solid foundation.
Right.
Now, the study plan will give you the foundation, but what does your review process currently look like?
So when I get a question wrong, I go back and I try to figure it out myself. So I don't even know what the right answer is. I try to just solve it again, knowing that, for example, B was wrong. And then I check to see if what I chose the second time is correct. If it's not, that's when I go in and see why it wasn't right.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, it's great to review the questions without yet knowing the answer, so you can give yourself another chance to solve it. And you can see, was timing the issue or was simply understanding the issue? Now, I know that you have a variety of questions for me, and one of them was on reviewing wrong answer choices. So when you're reviewing these wrong answer choices, what are you looking to do?
Get the right answer. I don't think I necessarily go through each answer and talk to myself about why it's correct, why it's wrong. I kind of just look at something and I'm like, no, it can't be, and I move on.
Well, sure. I mean, some choices you will be able to eliminate off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Something you will automatically know are just patently absurd, couldn't possibly be the answer. But of course, there are others that are tempting. So if you're in the typical case where you're down to 2 and you're not sure what to do, you, of course, pick one and move on. Whether it was right or wrong, though, you want to review it anyway, because even if you got it right, you could have just gotten lucky. So review all of those where you're unsure when you're down to 2. And for the tempting wrong answer, figure out exactly what makes it tempting and then what makes it wrong. And then for the right answer, figure out what made it seem unappealing, what discouraged you from choosing it, but ask yourself what still makes it correct. And instead of just talking this over silently in your head, actually write it out. Keep a notebook or talk it out with a friend or a coach or a tutor, somebody. But it's important to articulate your thought process to help you fully develop it. Because when you're just talking to yourself in your head, you're not going to go deep enough. As you often find when you're discussing anything, right? When you talk it out, you actually develop your thoughts further. You analyze on a deeper level just by talking about something. It forces you to put it into words and make it more real for yourself. And so this takes a lot of time, of course. Doing one single exam, if let's say, even if you got a 170 on that exam, that means you got about 10 questions wrong, but there could be another 10 to 15 questions that you were unsure of and got lucky. So that's 25 questions. At 5 minutes a question, that would take well over 2 hours, right? Take a lot of time. And if you're spending more than 5 minutes on reviewing a single question, which you should, and if you have more than 25 to review, which you may, it'll take 4 hours, 5 hours. It takes a long time, but it's worth it. That's where the gains come from.
Okay. So this should all be untimed then, because you're saying excuse me, more than 5 minutes per question, because that's another thing. I spend so much time reviewing that I'm just I took too much time. This is crazy. I won't have this much time on the exam.
Well, reviewing is, you're not going to be reviewing on test day, of course. On test day,
right.
You're doing questions, moving on, timer stops, whatever. But reviewing, that's definitely untimed. No question. You do the TE exam timed, you review it later untimed, and you take as long as you reasonably need to. Okay. So if it takes you 10 minutes on one question, that's okay. And you can review it yourself first. You can write out your thoughts in a notebook or a journal or in a document. And then later, of course, you can look at explanations from a variety of sources as well to help clarify your thinking or help you see it in a new way. But the first step is to look it over yourself.
Okay. One of my other questions was that, in regards to me only having 2 answer choices left, a lot of the times I find that it's the way that the answer choice is written for logical reasoning, it's reversed. And that's what confuses me. I don't know if that's a particular question, sufficient assumption or what, but that's what really trips me up the most. That's when I find myself in that predicament the most.
Yeah, sure. They're really good at making tempting wrong answer choices. What they'll often do is, for, let's say, a necessary assumption question, they will craft a very tempting, sufficient assumption answer. So it's it's the right answer to the wrong question. So you have to be laser focused on what exactly is the questions that I'm asking for. A lot of times, halfway through evaluating the choices, students will forget which question type it actually was. If it's a strengthening question, you don't want to choose a weakener.
So
Another thing is, go ahead, please.
So you're saying like sometimes when I look at the answer choice, I could figure out like this answer choice would help strengthen it. So it can't be because right now I'm trying to like weaken it, for example.
Right. You want to be evaluating them, asking, does this weaken? No. Does this weaken? No. Does this weaken? No. And then you could, upon review, think, or even briefly think during the moment, oh, that actually strengthens it. So definitely out. But constantly ask yourself, does this weaken it? And then, for example, a weaken except question, you find the 4 that weaken, eliminate those. Whatever remains is your answer. And that except might strengthen, or it might simply have no impact at all.
Okay. I guess let's look at my other questions. Oh, so for logic games, sometimes I repeat them so much that I know the answers. So at that point, should I just like not even focus on that game, or what can I get out of it?
You can get out of it a more efficient way to solve the game. Maybe there are ways to make more inferences up front, or make a more fully fleshed out diagram up front. There are sometimes insights I'll gain from doing a game on the 20th time or the 30th time. And keep that in mind when you're looking at explanations, either video or written. That's typically someone's perfect way of doing the game after having done that same game several times, maybe even dozens of times. So you can't always expect that you will solve the game perfectly or in the most efficient way possible on first glance. The idea is that under realistic test day conditions, maybe you'll solve 2 out of the 4 games super efficiently, and that will help you build up a time bank to solve the other 2 games a little bit more slowly.
Okay. And like, is it true that everything kind of like repeats on the LSAT? So eventually like a game that I've been doing for so long, the way that I diagram it will come in handy for other games?
Absolutely. There are some games that are virtual carbon copies of each other. And there are others that repeat the same themes again and again and again. For example, grouping in-out games with long conditional chains. There have been several games like that. There have been other multi-level ordering games that are virtual copies of each other. This has become less common in recent exams, but it is still worth becoming proficient in those just because they come up again and again. And I have a list of games that have repeated that I'll send you after this conversation that you can look at as an exercise. But you also want to develop a certain flexibility in your approach, because the hardest games are what are often called curveball weird games, where they don't really neatly fit into a category, but they still have the same underlying principles.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to mention to you, Sarah, is that with games in particular, another thing you want to look for in terms of solving them more efficiently is to make sure that you're efficiently using previous work. A lot of times on your first or second attempt of a game, you might be drawing lots and lots of diagrams. But later, if you can get better at looking back at the previous diagrams that you've drawn, you might be able to use the work you've drawn for question number 3 to help you solve question number 5. As you go through the game, you build up a kind of like a library of valid hypothetical scenarios that you know could work. And so if they're asking you, could something be the case in a future question? If you've already seen it occur previously, then you know it could, and you may not even have to draw a new diagram for that later question.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I think I've noticed that like a few times. One more question. In regards to like the study schedule, I had started from the second part, logical reasoning as opposed to logic games, because that's where my score is the highest. Like the last time I did a time section, I was at 19 out of 25. Is that a good approach, or should I be starting from logic games? Because logic games, I think in the past few months, I've been getting 13 right consistently throughout. Like it's not improving or decreasing. So that's why I just move forward.
Well, I would think that if logic games are an area of struggle for you, you might want to focus more on those.
Okay.
They are the most perfectible section. And if that's where you're scoring the lowest, that's your lowest hanging fruit. I would say if you're already doing pretty well in logical reasoning, relatively speaking, you might want to spend less time there and more time on your weak areas.
Okay. So if I was to because my thought process was that if I was to improve what I'm already good at, that's like fast points. Is that right?
I don't know about that, honestly. I would tend to disagree with that. I would think that if you're already at getting only about 6 wrong, you might reduce that to 3 wrong in a short period of time, but you're only gaining 3 points per section there. On the other hand, logic games, 13 right that's only about half right, honestly, which is like pretty low, honestly. You could improve that though. That's the easiest section to improve upon significantly. And logic games, they're mathematical. And like I said, many of them are copies of each other, testing the same fundamental principles. So if you can learn those principles, and you can definitely learn those by October, focus on those, learn those, maybe spend half your time on games, a quarter on reasoning, a quarter on reading comp. That'll really maximize your bang for your buck in terms of the time invested.
Okay. So when should I start timing those? Because I could sit there and spend 15 minutes on a game right now since I'm just starting. So yeah, when should I time those?
15 minutes on a game when you're just learning them really is not bad at all. I'll have people tell me they spend like an hour on a single game. So that's pretty good in comparison. But I'd say work through the schedule covering the games portion, which is probably a couple of weeks, right? Spend a couple of weeks working on games. Maybe if you can, speed it up. What's your current situation like? Are you working? Are you in school? Or are you just studying?
I'm just studying right now.
Oh, awesome. Then in that case, I would say for you especially, the schedule is more important for the level of specificity it contains about what to do than the particular day-by-day breakdown. So you could do 2 days worth of work in one day. Just work through everything in the order given. Don't burn out, of course. Don't study 7 or 8 hours a day. I would cap it at 5 to 6 hours maximum in a single day. But you could easily get through the games portion of the schedule in just a week or two. And of course, focusing on particular weak game types. Like if you're good on ordering, focus more on grouping, for example. But once you finish that portion of the schedule, then start timing full game sections. And maybe you start off getting yourself 40 minutes on a section and gradually cut it down to 35.
Okay. So you're saying once I get, for example, if I'm just working on ordering, once I'm good at that, that's when I should start timing it?
I'm saying once you're done with the games portion of the schedule overall.
Oh, overall. Okay. Okay, yeah. I'll try that.
Cool. One other thing I want to suggest is don't time individual games. Like you mentioned 15 minutes on a game. It's fine to track that, but games vary in difficulty. Some will be easier than others, some will be harder than others. So don't time individual games. You can track them, but instead just time the section as a whole.
Okay.
When you get to that point.
So what I noticed is that you use a lot of prep tests. So I'm supposed to order those separately, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because that's one of the reasons why I didn't start logic games, because I didn't have those games. Is there any book in particular you find really important? Because I don't know if I can order all of them.
Get the most recent books of exams. I would say get exams at this point 62 and up.
Okay.
Or 52 and up. You could get the books of 52 to 61, 62 to 71, and 72 to 81. So there are 3 books of 10. They're about $20 each on Amazon, and they're the best source of material. And since you said you're at 13 correct on games right now, I would suggest doing all the games from 52 to present, and I'll send you a list of them.
Okay.
And those games, just work on them because you have to expose yourself to a wide variety of games in order to truly master them. And there's only 1 section per exam, so 30 sections of games or so is not unreasonable to do, especially since you have the time to study. You're in a better position than most to really maximize it. Okay,
definitely. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. What would you say is the biggest insight you got from our coaching conversation today?
I think that 5-step idea that you were telling me about, because just like you mentioned, I was doing 4 and 5, and I was timing everything. So I wasn't really taking my time to learn the way to go about how to solve different problems. And I think that's the biggest thing I'm going to take from you, because I'm going to try to use it.
Excellent, Sarah. Well, I'm really glad we connected. I'm glad to have you in the courses. And please feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward.
Okay. Thank you very much.